what I'm showing you now is an sample of the 8 competencies, and we have developed an online assessment where you can actually get a score on each one of these 8 competencies. And these are actual scores from an accounting team in California of about 10 or 12 people. So these are the average scores of about 10 people that took this networking competency assessment at the same time. And I'm showing you this to make you aware that this is why this was part of creating the 8 competencies as we created them. How do people know how good they are at each competency? And so this gives the individual, and it gives us confidence that we know that people could get better at networking. And so 60 to 65% of all of the scores that we see on these networking competency assessments, the average score is somewhere between 40 and 60, which basically says people need to learn how to, they can learn to do behaviors and skills that will make them more effective. And, about 30% of the scores are higher than 60, 65, 66, 72. And so they have some good networking skills. They could still improve to some extent. And then there's the rarefied air of people that probably 3 to 5% of the people that score 80% on every competency the very first time they take the assessment. So as we go through the competencies, realize that, you have a certain skill level for each of these competencies. And what I'll be sharing with you are some skills and behaviors, some of which maybe you already do, but if you don't, this is a skill or behavior that'll help you, become more proficient in that particular competency. So again, the first competency, adopt a positive networker identity. Take a second and read this definition, and in the chat, pick out a word or a phrase that kind of jumps out at you from this definition. Milray, Ron, you seeing any responses in the chat?
Yep. Some people have identified mutually beneficial.
Okay.
Someone else is focused on the word deliberate. Someone else has talked about, a couple of other people have talked about exchanging.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you all get an A, because those three answers are basically the most important things in this definition. So networking is a deliberate process. Obviously, you've either got to say that, pick up the phone, meet somebody, set a time to have a conversation one-on-one, or you've got to sign up for a networking event. So it's a deliberate process. And when you set up that, when you are networking, it's about exchanging information. This is the teaching and giving part of the whole conversation. And the goal in exchanging information and teaching and giving is to create a mutually beneficial relationship. And again, that takes time. It's again, a deliberate process. You don't create a mutually beneficial relationship in the first 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 conversations you have with someone. It takes some time. So I don't expect you to leave here, this session, having memorized that textbook definition that comes from our book, Strategic Connections. But there's a simple definition for you to memorize about networking. And this again goes back to the first competency, adopting a positive networker identity. Networking isn't about talking and taking. Networking is about teaching and giving. So again, this is this first competency about adopting a positive networker identity. And for each of these, if you look at talking and taking, if you've ever been in a situation that's been manipulative or one-sided, and the person's just talking and taking and getting stuff from you, but you're not getting anything in return, none of us enjoy that, and none of us want to be part of that. There's a long-standing myth that networking is only for extroverts, and that's not true. In fact, some of the most introverted people I know are actually master networkers. If you go back enough years, you go back to the 80s and 90s, networking is only for job seekers and sales professionals. Well, the world has changed in the last 30 or 40 years. And so networking and building relationships is no longer optional in today's workplace. even if you're in a job and you're in an organization, almost nothing gets done by a single individual. You are working with a team, you're working cross-functionally with other departments, and building those relationships internally in an organization is just as important as building those relationships when you're in the job search process. So again, the second, in terms of teaching and giving, it's an exchange, it's teaching and learning about the other person. It's lots of learned behaviors, and it's all about building relationships, not just going to networking events.